You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is February 16th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, happy Valentine's Day weekend, bud.
Oh, Spencer, thank you. Yes, we are on the precipice of Love is in the Air ending in game.
True.
And we are beyond. We have now received the news that we've been waiting for, which we'll, obviously we'll talk about a lot today.
Yep.
We have a date for 11.1, which is going to be not this coming week in your region, but next week. So, that'll be the 25th in NA, and the 26th in EU, and, wherever your regional reset is. So exciting stuff. We finally got the official date. If you're a listener of TSZ consistently, then you shouldn't be surprised. This was a date that we predicted a while ago when we saw the schedule for Turbulent Timeways was really the thing. It's like, okay, that's the big tell right there. As long as nothing goes terribly wrong, like this is what they're targeting. And it kind of made sense with the PTR schedule, even with the holiday and everything as well. So, yeah, time to start, really wrapping things up for end of season 1, for Nerebar Palace raid, etc. We are officially on the clock now. We know when everything is going to happen, which is a good feeling to have. We kind of had an idea, and you figure, okay, it's probably going to be like this, and I probably have this many resets or whatever, but now we know for sure.
Yeah, you can sort of plan your life a little bit more around it, especially as a raid team. You can sort of figure out, okay, what do we want to do with the last couple of resets we have? Who still needs some gear? Who doesn't need gear? Who's getting mounts? How do mounts work? What are we going to do with that? Sort of shift the priorities of the team a little bit more, which I think is great. So, yes, it's nice to have some timelines and some dates. Speaking of which, Jason, we still don't have any timelines or dates for next month when Blizzard's doing gatherings that are starting up all over the place to launch things. And so right? I'm like, where's the timeline so I can plan my travel?
It's like the UK one is the only one that I think they've done ticketing for, and they've released like details about.
Yep.
Yeah, the one on the East Coast in the US is 3 months away. Not even or something like that. I would like some details. I might attend. I don't know.
The one in Toronto, which is like 4 hours from me, which I could easily travel to, is less than a month away from happening, and we have no idea what's happening with it. So yes, I would love some details around these big gatherings, because if we do have Canadian listeners who want to meet up and say hi and do things, I want to organize things around that. So, it's one of those awkward kind of moments we're currently in. So we're trying to figure that out too. But yes, outside of that,
that'd be appreciated.
Yes. Outside of that, this past week in World of Warcraft has been very augmentation evoker time for me, pretty much. I raided last Monday because the Super Bowl was Sunday. And so we bumped our Sunday, and that ended up being a mistake because Monday was disastrous. Terrible raid night.
Oh no! It was especially real bad. Super late in the season. It's like
it was rough.
Why are we still doing this?
It was really rough. So that did not go well. Hopefully tonight goes better. We're in there tonight. Hopefully it's a one night clear and it's easy and everything's happy and good. But yes, I spent the rest of my week with raiding on, so basically doing content for my evoker, who's getting up there item level wise. I think 621 or 622 now, which is good. And then I'm going to bring them in for the first 4 mythic bosses tonight. So hopefully get some drops out of that, which will help it a lot. And I've got about close to 140 Gilded Crest banked. So I can do a couple of crafted pieces and some upgrades on some pieces, which will be good to sort of get me all primed and prepped for the new content coming in. Currently, augmentation is still looking really good going into raid for next tier. So there is a chance that I end up being an aug main in the next raid tier, and my druid becomes my secondary character for that tier, and we see what happens. Unless for some reason Boomkin like skyrockets in performance. The biggest issue with Boomkin for this past raid tier has been that's consistently, the entire tier consistently been in the bottom 4 DPS classes and specs that are out there, which meant that it's never had a moment to shine. It's never felt middle of the pack. It's never felt anything like that, which I think is really unfortunate. There are weird niche scenarios where things can happen that help a Boomkin get farther up the charts, but if you go back and you look at all the WoW head stats for the 95th, 99th, sort of percentiles that they have going out there for Mythic content, like consistently bottom 4, and it just, you notice it feels bad. You're like, I got really good procs, and my rotation's going really well, and I landed all my cooldowns exactly when I should, and everything's going really good, and I'm doing 100 million less damage than the next. You're like, this is dumb. Like, this shouldn't be. Like, if I feel like I'm playing this well on a class, I shouldn't feel like I'm so massively far behind other people that are out there. So it's weird to see, like, an enhancement shaman sitting at the top of the meters at like 3.5 million DPS on a boss, and you're sitting at like 2.2 and you're feeling pretty good, or 2.4 and you're feeling pretty good on that single target boss. And you're like, there's 100 million damage between us at the end of that fight. It's impossible to catch that. So I do want to make a swap if there's something that's just going to feel better to play. So I've been enjoying AUG. I did a whole bunch of keys. I'm like 2450 or something like that now rating on my AUG. And man, does it ever make a difference in keys? Augmentation is like a really interesting multiplier to add to keys, because as the actual AUG evoker, you don't feel like you're like doing massive amounts of things, because you're going to consistently be like the third DPS. You're always going to be the third DPS, because everything you're doing is enhancing the other DPS. And it's a really interesting experience to be like, you're not only providing basically another flask buff to everyone in the group of primary stat, as opposed to like, more master, whatever. You're providing a huge primary stat buff. You're also duplicating some of their damage. You're enhancing their damage on certain targets during certain windows of time. You're creating those vulnerability periods. It's really interesting to sort of get into and check out. And I've really enjoyed that and the utility of it. So there is some potential for an AUG being a main in the next raid tier for me, which would be pretty fun.
Nice. Yeah, it's a cool spec. I mean, it's been controversial, and I mean, it came out so strong back in the middle of Dragonflight, but it had to, because you wanted people to play it, right?
Death Knights were the same thing, man. Death Knights were the same thing.
Yeah, right. It's like you got to bring stuff in hot to get people to switch to it, and it's just sort of the way it works. I've run with AUG a lot this season, and I mean, since he came in, really, but this season especially, like, that was sort of a thing that started unlocking a bunch of Keystone progress when we were lower geared and just less experienced. It's like the fact that somebody was running AUG just gives everybody, that extra survivability and all that. So, that was definitely pretty nice. I mean, for us, it was a pretty light week as always. But since we got the announcement before, I think we had the official announcement before raid started on Tuesday, because I was having a conversation with the team, like, should we do achievements this week? We know patch is coming soon, whatever. And people were like, we'll do whatever. Yeah, we should get achievements done or what have you. And then the dates became official, and I'm like, okay, so we have this week, we have next week, then we have patch, and then we have season a week after that. Let's do one more week of reclears. We'll do achievements next week. We'll take patch week off, And so that's what we ended up doing. Probably our last time doing Mythic and Heroic reclears. I guess we'll see what happens this coming week, but the plan is going to be to focus on getting achievements done. We haven't done them at all, so we got to do all the bosses and then see how people feel, like if they want to come back and do other stuff. But I've been having a hard time getting people back for more than one night. Like night 2 is usually about 12 of us, so right. that kind of limits what you can actually do. I'd rather just probably take Wednesday off if it's going to be like, well, let's just try to clear the Heroic with a small group. Like I'm good actually at this point.
Right.
I did some keys. I did like 4 keys, which is what I've kind of been doing for the week, just to get some vault choices in case something cool pops up. My rogue buddy, my good friend who I've been playing with since Pandaria, he was in and out a lot this season because of stuff. He was traveling for a while, and he moved house and all that. So he's been sort of out of it maybe a bit more than he would have wanted to, and he was trying to get Keystone Hero done 2500.
Yep.
So he was like, "Hey, can we get some keys going?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll grab you a spot, whatever." Which meant I had to do keys other than like Dawnbreaker or Mystic Tyrannosaith, which I was like, "Dude, we're a little out of practice with some of these." But we got it for him. I think we had to do like a Necrotic Wake, which I haven't done Necrotic Wake in I don't know, man, months since the last time I did that.
It's so hit and miss, man. Necrotic Wake, I want to highlight, like, it really is one of those ones where if you happen to one-shot the bosses, it feels great. It's a great dungeon. It feels great.
Right. Yeah.
The moment you wipe on a boss and you've used spears and you've used orbs and you've used, like, it now feels terrible. Like, the moment that happens, I'm like, I genuinely am going to be happy to see this thing gone from the pool just because, and if they ever think about bringing it back, just because they need some sort of system to compensate for when that happens. And
weapons,
like they're so powerful and they make such a massive difference that, like, even if it's hey, if your timer expires, all the weapons respawn. And when you click the reset button on the, dude to reset your heroism and stuff, it resets all the weapons. I'd be fine with that. That would still be at least something. But
because sometimes, man, when you're struggling, it's just like, are we going to kill this boss? Like, do we just have to walk away? I mean, luckily we didn't hit that. We did have one. We ended up doing it twice, and the first run wasn't. It was a mess, but it it was kind of a funny story because. My DK buddy, who I run with a lot, he's been playing Shaman as the season sort of has wound down, just to get some variety and gear up another tune and maybe potentially switch. So he was I think he was running enhancement, and he was just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know if it's my internet. It's just WoW, but like it's not responsive. I can't play. And this occurs to him like when we're on boss 1 and he eats the barf, and it's like, okay. It turns out like his hard drive was full. So the next night he cleared that up and it was fine. But that first run was like, dude, you were like 4-manning most of this, and it was a mess. But I got Rogue Buddy up over 2,500, so that's cool. He's missing some teleports, so we'll see over the next couple weeks if we get a chance to get him some more. But he's not too concerned about that. He just wanted the cosmetic item, so that was fun. I mean, it's nice to have a reason to do them, right? And to be like, okay, we're gonna get this thing done for this person because they get something cool out of it. That's always nice. I did play a little bit outside of raid and dungeon this week, shockingly, which I haven't been doing lately, honestly. But I went around on Monday right before the event ended and got my 75 coins so I could get the new rocket mount, which is pretty awesome. I like small mounts for some reason, and it's a pretty small one. It might end up just becoming like my default, Brewmaster Monk mount maybe. And I got the Love Witch's Sweeper yesterday from Crown Chemical. I haven't gotten the Heartbreaker, but I got the new one at least, so that's good. I've only missed one reset, this whole event, and Love is in the Air does end tomorrow, but it ends after reset, so there's one more chance with that boosted drop chance. There's one more. If you can get in right after reset, you can do it. Like I've said many times over the years, every time this event rolls around, like I'm not like grinding tunes through Crown Chemical trying to get Heartbreaker. I don't like it. I wouldn't use it if I had it, but it is a thing I don't have, so it would be cool if it just kind of dropped. But just no luck so far this year. But I've been doing 1 or maybe 2 tunes a day. Like, I am not doing 50 tunes through. I did an attempt today. Man, somebody was like multi-boxing. It was obvious because their tunes had like very similar names that were like gibberish, but like with a letter switched. But they weren't doing anything. They didn't contribute hardly any damage to the process at all. They were just like sort of AFK, just like logging in multi-box tunes. It's like, can we put this mount on like a vendor or something? Like, it's just a mount, dude, and it's been in the game for like 15 plus years or what? Like, people shouldn't feel like they need to do stuff like this to get this thing. Like, just up the drop rate or so. Like, it made the experience miserable for me, and it's a 3-minute or less like process of queuing into a holiday boss as a tank. Like, I understand why the person doing that was doing it, but it's really not cool behavior. It's not fair play for everybody else in the group. So
And I had multiple groups this week where someone stood inside poison right off the bat and just died, and it was just dead for the whole thing. And you're like, great, that's great.
Good times. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, I actually like the way it's tuned this year. It is kind of dangerous. Like the stuff on the ground will kill people.
It will,
especially people who are multi-boxing and aren't good at it, and just manage to get both of their tunes into the instance, and that's about all they can manage.
I found myself doing something that I don't normally do, which is I actually pick up the one cologne and use it so that I actually am immune to a certain color of poison. Like I actually do that this year to be like, now I don't have to worry about it. I can stand in the green puddles.
Yeah, right.
Fine.
Well, you may not have a healer in the group anyway. Like there might be somebody cute as heals, but they might not be healing. It's like this is all it's all a side effect of the fact that the mount is such a rare drop, because you've driven people to madness and they are doing these things that like they wouldn't normally do.
True.
Right.
Yep.
And that result in a miserable experience for the entire group. Just up this thing, man. Give it some kind of streak protection. Put it on a vendor for like 900 tokens or something. Yep. I don't care. Whatever. Just like this is not working, and people are starting to go to length. I haven't seen this kind of stuff in previous years. I think people are really going over the top now, and I would like to see some kind of logic change there, because if this is what people are willing to do, it makes the game suck for everybody that's trying to do this boss.
Yeah, it's no longer something where we've described this before. This feeling before of you seek the feeling of, hey, isn't this amazing? I got this cool thing. It dropped. Yay me. This cool thing dropped. Yay. We've moved with this item to the point of, oh, thank God it's over. I never have to do this again. I hated doing that. I can stop punishing myself in having to do this. What a relief that I finally can stop punishing myself by doing this. It's no longer like a joyful experience. It's now relief of, having this burden that was assigned to you. Like it's like, okay, let's move on past that now, for sure. And I did a bunch of Levels in the Air. So I said last weekend I was like 1,070 or something tokens away. I'm now 60 away, so I can do that by just grabbing one more character and one or two more characters and going through some stuff before I'm actually done all of that. So yeah, I did the daily queuing. I think I missed a day as well. I just forgot on one of the days. My week has been continuing with collective bargaining and whatnot, so my brain is very much elsewhere when it comes to World of Warcraft at the moment. It doesn't mean that I'm not playing the game a lot. It is the game that I'm playing the most by far, but it is one of those cases where sometimes I forget things like, hey, Levels in the Air is going on, you should queue up for that dungeon. I'm like going around doing my profession farming and I forget that Levels in the Air is happening. That kind of thing. So I still did all my profession farm this week. I'm getting really close on some of them, and the funny thing to me is the ones that I'm getting really close on are for some of the newer characters I've made, where you just realize like there's just substantially less points in this tree. Like there's just 30 to 40% less knowledge needed to max out the profession than there is in other professions. That's kind of weird. How did that happen? Like I am surprised that there wasn't like some sort of default thing where they're like, okay, your profession trees should all have 150 knowledge points or 250 knowledge points in them, and that's the top end of what they should all have, as opposed to being like, no, this one's 160, that one's 350, this one, you're like, wait a minute, whoa, that's a really big difference. It's like, yes it is. That's a very, very large difference. And when you look at jewel crafting, you'll start to realize why that's such a bizarre freaking thing to do. Why is it that it takes 30 points to max out every gem as opposed to taking 10? When you look at over another profession, it takes 10 points to max out, how to learn how to do this. And you're like, this is really weird. I don't know what the decision-making process was on this, but I think there was it definitely feels like, okay, they assigned Ed to do this, and they assigned Steve to do that, and they assigned Joanna to do this, and they assigned, right? And then none of them had communication about how someone else is doing it, and they just all put forward their ideas and they all went into the game. That is still very much what it feels like with professions. So I think it's good to have individuality between them. I think it's very weird to have this much disparity in knowledge points between some of them, though. It's just a very strange thing to be looking at. So yeah, anyways, I will continue to reiterate that I do recognize that this is an expansion feature. Professions are something that, you complete over the span of an expansion or in the first season. And I am talking about finishing professions in the first season, and that is through a lot of dedication and work and gold. But it is one of those things where that is very fast for something that's supposed to last, years, or a year and a bit, in that case. So yeah, I recognize that. I do recognize that that my asks sometimes are a little extreme, because I'm asking from I'm playing the game a lot and want to be able to get through this quickly. I always think about the poor guy who's trying to catch up, and it's just like impossible. Like there's that point. It's got to be like 6 months out from the end of the expansion where it's like you will never max that profession. Period. It's impossible. Could be 8 months.
Right. Yeah.
You'll just never.
It's like if you didn't start by now, you're never going to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of those. It's one of those things with professions. So yeah. But no, I did the Loves in the Air stuff. I was done with Lunar Fest last week, so I didn't have to touch any of that. But I was glad to get all the rewards I wanted to get out of that. I did time walking still, because time walking is still heroic rewards. I did Sethune, so that I got my extra piece of heroic gear. My time walking reward was a belt. My Sethune reward was a belt, and the Mythic Plus I ran the first time was a belt. So it was not super helpful as far as that went, but I did what I could. It did give me enough tokens to buy the magic carpet off of the vendor that is out there for time walking inside of Dalaran for Ice Crowns, because we're doing Wrath Lich King week this past week. So I was able to buy that, which was cool. I like adding a new mount, and I always like the magic carpet mounts, because my original character was a mage and he was a tailor, so he made all of them, so he rode them around a lot, which I really enjoy. So it was nice to get another one of those. Outside of that, my week was it was professions, it was Mythic Plus, it was that bad raid experience, and then we're moving into next week, man. It's there's a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
Yeah, I got to start this week. I got to get some stuff done, because I got story questing to finish. I never did the .7 story questing, so I want to get that done before new story stuff comes out. And I got to do Zekvir ? That's the thing. Like, I definitely have to get done before season roll. I guess it'll still be up patch week, but I really want to get it done before patch if I can. Which I should be able to squeeze it in this week. So, time to start ramping some stuff up a little bit outside of this has been like maybe the downest down period I've had, like in the middle of an expansion, in a long time. And part of it is just because I got stuff done so early, right? Like I feel like a combination of the people that I'm playing with, the overall content tuning, the availability of rewards, it just made stuff wrap up like faster than maybe previous seasons did, which then made kind of the tail a lot longer. And it's like, well, I just, I don't have a lot of motivation. So I got to find some, because I got stuff I got to get done before, before patch and before season roll.
Yeah, for sure. It's that list is long, and it really comes down to like, what do I have to get done that's going to go away? And what do I have to get done to actually be able to play the new patch content? And we'll talk about that in this episode. This is the one where we're going to give you a week's notice of fair warning on some of this stuff to get it done. I did start doing the main storyline quests on my Evoker, because they all reward Valor Stones. So if you're trying to gear up a character, doing main story while you're like trying to find Mythic Plus groups is a really great way to just earn a whole bunch of Valor Stones, because they're all worth like 10 Valor Stones for every quest you turn in. So you can just get hundreds of them very quickly by chugging through the main story. And if you're someone who still needs to complete the main story, it's a great way to, make sure you unlock the new content too. So let's hop into what's going on this week, and we'll start covering some of that stuff. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Cataclysm time walking event, meaning that you can access time walking versions of End Time, Blackrock Caverns, Lost City of Tol'vir, the Stone Core, Vortex Pinnacle, and Throne of Tides, and you'll be earning 50% increased reputation from combat and quests for Cataclysm reputations. This will get you some 554 eye level gear from the dungeon drops. There's 541 vendor gear off of the vendors, which is a great way to grab some gear for your characters. If you have alts that you're leveling up who need some item levels, head on over to those time walking vendors. It's not really expensive badge wise, and you can get yourself a bunch of gear that will really help you through leveling as well as time walking. Of course, there is also the quest to complete 5 dungeons or Firelands time walking bosses, because you can get there to the time walking version of Firelands, get yourself some 597 loot off of the bosses in there, as well as a piece of 610 Cataclysm raid loot, if that's something you're looking to get. So this again is that, like, hey, do I have spaces left still for my Evoker? Should I be going and doing this? Yeah, probably. If I don't have at least a heroic piece in every slot, this is certainly worthwhile going to go do, because I can get heroic pieces of loot and they can help fill out those gear spaces that are missing pieces going into next week. As well as, obviously, it's a great experience buff because it's still the Turbulent Timeways, which means you're going to be getting yourself a heroic piece of loot from doing 5 of those time walking dungeons or killing 5 bosses, and a lot of experience gain. Get that additional experience boost that happens after completing 4 of them. And if you've been doing most of these, but not all of them, I would keep track. I would go check your achievement tracker to see Turbulent Timeways 2 to see where you're at, because we're running out of time. Like this is last week of, I think this is the last week of Turbulent Timeways. So you gotta be sure that if you're at 405, you do it this week to get that achievement. If you're anywhere off of 405, then you better hope that they throw up another opportunity to do it later in the expansion, which they did do with Dragonflight. So if that's the case with War Within, then you will have an opportunity later, hopefully, perhaps, to get that achievement and get that mount, if that's something you're looking to do. Okay, Call of the World Soul is this previous week, which means we've now moved into Titan Disc Fragments. So you need to collect 100 fragments from rares, treasures, dungeon bosses, and delves. I almost nerfed it, which would have been awesome. So if you are someone who needs to do this, your best bet is in the next day or so, as far as Tuesday or Wednesday reset. You get out there and camp the world boss and try and defeat the world boss when you're not inside of a group, which will get you 50 of these fragments. Otherwise, your best bet to get these is probably running delves and finishing delves off, and that'll get you to those 100 fragments. The reward for this is, your spark and some weekly nice items that you can get out of these caches. They're not amazing. They're not like, if you're someone who's like, hey, Titan Disc Fragments, I'll just do that in my own time over the next couple of weeks, that's fine. This is not like an urgent need for you. But if you're someone who's like, I just hit max level, I've been grinding Mythic Pluses, I've gotten some fragments, but I could use another one in my off time while I'm waiting for queues to pop, Titan Disc Fragments are a way to go to help get you some of that stuff as well.
I think delves are the way to go if you're like playing a character that you're gearing up, into that heroic range or whatever, because you get like 30 plus from each one. So, something to keep in mind. I ended up, I think I'm at about 47 from the last time Titan Disc Fragments came around. Like I said, I just haven't been doing stuff in the outdoor world, and I used to like do the weeklies and whatever, even well past the point of getting anything out of them. But now it's like, whatever. But hey, if you need sparks, for crafted gear or whatever, like that's probably the biggest thing, I guess, is staying on top of that. If you're trying to get a tune, from like basically fresh 80 to ready for, for season 2, then that's like a huge benefit, is getting caught up on your sparks and everything, so you can get crafted stuff. But yeah, if this sort of ran out of steam about like a third of the way through the season, where it was like, okay, well, I have like my 2 crafted pieces and I have enough sparks that I'm probably never even going to use. So like, I'm not going to move my crafted pieces around, and I'm playing regularly and replacing spots. So I just need my embellishments. I think it's fine. I like the dev team kind of talks about like graduating out of content or whatever. And I just don't think there are super compelling reasons to do this once you kind of reach your item level goals and stuff. I would like it if there was some more maybe gold rewards in this process. You get some gold, but not a lot. And this is also, I think, like my lack of motivation to do this stuff. This points out the issue with Paragon bags being so bad anymore. Because I used to just do stuff just to do it, just to get that Paragon bag progress. And I would know that, okay, next week I'll get, a nice stack of coin off of this or whatever. But, the last couple expansions of Paragon bags just aren't driving, my participation in outdoor world stuff. So that's kind of where I ended up. But I do like the 3-week rotation, though. It's really nice. Like, you could theoretically Like, I guess if all you're really concerned about is, getting what you can get before season roll, then you could like sit on this and pick up the Delves Weekly next week, patch week, and then you could, do your delves for the weekly, and then you're gonna already have basically all of your disc fragments. So being able to overlap them and double or triple up on them is really cool. That's the great thing about the way that they did it in War Within.
Yeah, I'm definitely thrilled with how they chose to lay out the every 3-week rotation. It has been very nice, especially for alts, to be like, hey, I log into this character to do, in my case, professions on a regular basis, but I'm not on the character frequently enough throughout a week to finish a lot of this stuff within a week. But over 3 weeks, I can get through a lot of these things just doing that little bit of play that I do on the character. And so it's a lot of leeway that I really enjoy. So I'm glad they did that. And it also means there's more things that build up to do. So if I'm only logging into a character, a couple times a week, I will get this like backlog of tasks that I could spend my time doing, which means that when I'm on that character going, I don't really know what I want to do in WoW, I can go, I can do this and do this and do that, and have all these objectives that have lined up because they all built up over those 3 weeks. So I really like that. So I'm glad they went with that rotation. Okay, the PvP brawl for the week is Shadowpan Showdown, which means you go into Shadowpan Monastery and you are stepping into the Tiger's Peak Arena, and you will control the center control point to activate 2 bosses. And this is the PvEVP situation where these 2 bosses fight. You try and defeat the other team's boss while trying to fend off the other team. It's a pretty crazy brawl. This is definitely one of the cooler ones they've ever done. So if you haven't experienced it, it's worth just queuing in to see what it's like. I certainly enjoy it a lot, and I dig the PvEVP sort of situation that they created with this. So check it out.
Yeah, it's a cool twist. My only complaint is that Showdown should only have 1 W in it, like the old Samurai Showdown Neo Geo games. I don't know. Maybe somebody owns that, and you can't call a thing Showdown without the first W. But every time I type it out, I want to just type it like Samurai Showdown, and that's not right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool, and I would like to see them kind of expand on that concept a bit more. But then again, there's already so much stuff to do in the game that having like more of a dedicated PvE mode, I think, would just be. I think you start getting to a point where it's like there's like too much stuff to do in WoW, right? Like we're pretty close to that point already. So I don't think we need a whole dedicated branch of that. Once every 12 weeks or whatever, having a brawl to queue into is probably good enough, but it is a cool concept.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in Wrath of Lich King. We've seen it in Legion. There's not Legion, sorry. What was it called? The one that we all... Wow, I blanked. Warlords of Draenor. There we go. Wow, did my brain actually finally blocked the expansion out of its existence. That's crazy. Yes, Warlords of Draenor.
10 years and it was like, okay.
Yep, it's just gone.
Yep.
So yeah, that.
It was like persistent zones that were like PvP zones, but had PvE objectives in them and stuff.
Yeah. So we've seen that. This to me is just a much more fun experience for players to bite-size, queue in, check out, see what they want to do, and not feel nearly as overwhelmed and swarmed, because the biggest thing with those are they're open zones. So like you have like 40 players at least running at you, and you're trying to feel like you're accomplishing something. Whereas in this situation, it's 5-on-5, and there's just a robot, and it's not quite as crazy and extreme. A little more controlled, which is nice. All right, Mythic Plus affix this week is Devour, which means players are periodically afflicted with a healing quota while in combat. Healing or dispelling the quota gives players a stacking 2% max health increase up to 10% and 4% crit buff increase up to 20%. Failing to heal or dispel the quota will heal enemies for 10% of their health per debuff that wears off. So, or per quota that isn't met is probably the best way to put that. So yeah, the quota, and the reason why we call it a quota is because this is a static amount of healing that needs to happen on a character. It is not a barrier or an absorb for that healing. The healing still happens regardless, and the player can feel that healing, so they're not like prevented from receiving it. It's just that quota needs to be met for it to actually trigger to finish this. So that seems to be the best way to describe it, and that's what we went with to sort of describe it, and I think that it works much better than the way that Blizzard did, which makes it sound like it's a big absorb that people are going to have to deal with. So yeah, this is not so bad. Not one of the worst ones that's out there. It's max health you feel, but it's not enough to really be like, wow, it's crazy. It's not like 30% max health or something.
You can't go do something weird with it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the crit buff is nice. Everyone appreciates more crits because crits are cool, but you don't feel it in my opinion, unless it's like really lines up with cooldowns in a very specific way. But even then, typically cooldowns increase your crit in some way, so it might not be that noticeable. But it's one of the weaker buffs. It's one of the more punishing if you don't clear it. But as we've gone on, especially with the Circe's Signet coming in with the ring, clearing it has become substantially easier to do. So this is one of those weeks where I'd say, if you're going to run Mythic Plus, just have everyone throw in one healing citrine into their ring, one that actually heals 3 people around you or 5 people around you for an amount, because that'll help take care of this in a huge way. And if everyone's running one, you might actually be able to ignore the affix depending on how this thing procs. So it's kind of crazy.
Yep. You get some good timing on those procs, and I mean, even with bad timing, as long as you get something floating around, it does help a lot. This affix was like scary the first time it came in, and it's just gotten kind of less so every time around because we've geared up and like we just kind of overpowered it. You still have to pay attention to it. Like, you absolutely need to clear this, but it's much more clearable than it was at the outset of the season. It's quiet. It doesn't put anything into the field, which is cool. The thing about the way that it works, which I always point out, and is that you do need to be able to like be healed.
Yeah. If you're at max health, you cannot clear this without a dispel. That's why the dispel is part of it.
Yeah, so there are some effects and consumables and stuff that you can't use. Like, they would count if you could use them. They would count towards clearing the debuff, but you might not be able to cast or consume them if you're already at full health. So that's a consideration. I mean, I think overhealing still counts. So if a heal could be like applied to you, it counts. But like, I always give the example, like, I can't impending victory if I'm at full health. I can't, use my big self heal. So just something to keep in mind with timing on stuff, or like if you're trying to do something and you're going, why doesn't this work? Like, it does work against the affix, but there's just other conditions.
Yeah. The scariest thing this week is you using up dispels to clear this debuff and then not having dispels for key abilities. If you're doing Grim Batol and you used up your dispels, so you cannot dispel the curses that are going out. If you're doing Mists of Tyrannosaith and you're doing the maze and there's the one-shot debuffs that go out, and you can't dispel those because you're dispelling this, that sucks in a big way. Yep. So definitely pay attention to how you're using your dispels. Know your dungeons as far as where those dispels are needed. Otherwise, lean in towards trying to heal through them and cover it with healing, because otherwise you could be leaving yourself in a really bad spot with debuffs that go out in these Mythic Pluses. They're very punishing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a good kind of just rule to go by is like, if you're doing a dungeon that has those conditions, let your healer prioritize their dispels for that. And I think most, if not all, classes have a way to remove this, even if it's a talent you really don't want to take. So talent into it, use the tools that your class provides you and use them wisely, right? Like, save it for that pack that has that thing, save it for the Warlock pack or whatever, and then use it when it goes out if you're fighting that stuff. I think that's a pretty smart way to handle it. Also, now that we have official dates for the rotation, we can say, right, officially, like, Oblivion's gone forever, because next week will be Voidbound during patch week, and then I guess we'll be in a different rotation for season 2. Maybe we just go back to Ascendant to kick off the season, and then the new affix slots in week 2 or something, or maybe they mix it up. We don't know, but pretty sure that Oblivion's not coming back again, which is great because we don't like Oblivion, and I won't be sad to see it go. But we've been saying, every time it rolls around, like, oh, maybe this is the last time we'll see it. Well, I think we've seen it for the last time. So hooray. I'm glad they're getting rid of that one. Hopefully the new one isn't too bad, but it'll be a couple weeks till we actually get a chance to play with it.
Yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to that affix being gone. It was not fun to do keys around. It really sucks. Even this week's one, I'm still like, I'm not, like, I can deal with it, but it's so much bloat on the screen. The fact that they spawn in a staggered way makes it a little bit more difficult to deal with, because you have to sort of wait till more of them spawn before whoever's going to break them does their big ability, or like everyone throws their ability too early and then you're like scrambling to get the last two, throwing interrupts on them or something. Like it's not great as far as dealing with this one goes. So I am happy at least one of them is gone, and we'll have to see what the new thing looks like and how it feels for folks once we get into that. But Love is in the Air, as Jason mentioned, wraps up tomorrow after reset. So you have one more reset to go for Love is in the Air. If you're someone who's still trying to get some of those rewards, I've listed them all off before. I'm not going to list them all off again, but there is a lot there. There's like 1,300 tokens worth of stuff. So be sure that you're taking advantage of getting as much as you can this year if it's something that you want. I certainly would recommend multiple characters if you're like trying to get a last minute push in. That's going to really help you out a lot. So be sure you're taking advantage while you can. All right, notable hot fixes. There was some Love is in the Air fixes that came in. The vendors at the Gala Gifts now allow Earthen customers to complete the Loving Yourself Your Way by snacking on rock candy packages, which I think is awesome. I love that they added this. And Love Fool and Sturdy Love Fool can now be placed as intended for the achievement I Pitied the Fool. So if either of these are things you're attempting to get and weren't able to, you now can. You just have a tight window to do it, so be sure you're taking advantage while you can. All right. Plunder Storm Gear Reward. There was yet another gear reward that was not working the way it was supposed to. Kaivax has stepped in and said, we have an ETA. We expect to implement this reward for players who didn't receive it by putting it on a vendor, specifically Dakash, in the markets of Eastern Dornogal. This will occur with weekly scheduled maintenance on the 18th in this region. So in other words, a couple of days away, that reward should pop up on Dakash, and you can pick up your reward from them there. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think this was a different one. I think this was one for 5K Plunder or whatever it was that just like for some reason didn't go out to some people.
Yeah.
I think like there was an older hotfix with like, oh, we're going to fix this and push it. And I think they just couldn't get that to work. Putting it on a vendor is actually a bit cleaner because then you should be able to pick like which character you want to go get it instead of just like you log in and, oh, well, hey, guess what you have in the mail? And it's just for this character or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe they should have just done it that way to begin with. But yeah, if you didn't get your, I mean, I didn't get mine because I didn't play Plunderstorm at all this round. But if you never got it, you should be able to get it after maintenance this week. Just look for Dakash in Dornogal somewhere and pick it up.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the updates go that we have to cover from the big content update coming on the 25th, we do want to highlight that Plunderstorm is wrapping up on the 25th. So if you want to get rewards from Plunderstorm, if you have not touched it at all, be sure you get out there over this next week. I will say it takes like 6 hours to 7 hours to get all of the rewards. If you played in the first Plunderstorm season, all the new stuff from this go around, it's like 6 to 7 hours to actually get all of that stuff. If you are someone who has nothing and you've never touched Plunderstorm before, it's going to take you a while. This is like a 20-hour or a 25-hour, work to grind to get all of that stuff. The positive about this is I feel like since they did a second Plunderstorm, we'll probably see a third at some point down the line, and some of these rewards will probably come back around again for folks to be able to earn them. So hopefully this isn't the last time we see some of these rewards for people wanting to earn them. But yes, this is your last week, so take advantage of this week for Plunderstorm if that's something you're wanting to get. Or if you're like, hey, I did Plunderstorm, I got all the rewards, I haven't touched it in a while, maybe I'll look at it again sometime. Oh, this is my last week? Okay, yeah, I'll definitely make sure I make some time to enjoy that game mode before it goes away, if it's something you enjoy doing. Now, this post, the Undermined content update goes live February 25th, has a lot of stuff in it that we've already covered. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that are in it, which is the zone overview for entering the Goblin Hub, the no license needed for drive on how the vehicles are going to work for moving around inside the actual city that's there. And obviously we'll have links to all these inside of our show notes. So if that's something you want to go and check out, you can. The carve out a rewarding career. This is what we covered last week about, finding which Goblin cartel you're going to work for and how you're going to support them and the different tasks that they assign you in doing that. The new delves stuff that's out there to check out. They have a link to that post as well. And the new PvP arena, the Cage of Carnage, is another one they have a link to. The thing we want to actually highlight, though, is that there were new user interface updates that came in on this post. They tried to sneak something in there without us noticing amongst all the stuff they've already talked about. There are 4 new campsites available for your warband at the login screen. 4 new ones. All right. The Onaran Overlook will be available, where adventurers from across Azeroth would be hard-pressed to find a more scenic spot to rest. New with the launch of Undermine content update, they have the Cultist Quay, which I love that they chose to do a Cultist one, where the rushing sound of water in this delve drowns out the occasional Cultist chants. This is from a vendor. It's from Reno inside of Dornegal, and you unlock it by progressing the Season 2 Delver's Journey. They have Feywood Spring, which is the Earthen of Feywood, are happy to host such renowned adventurers. Just clean up after yourselves. And this is from the All That Kaz achievement that's out there. You can unlock the screen. And the Galagio Grand Gallery. Gallywix may be willing to squeeze Undermine for all it's worth, but he sure has taste. And this is from the Going Goblin Mode achievement that you can get. So there's these different screens that you will be able to unlock, which I think is a really neat sort of like peek into what they're planning to do with some of these things, is relevant content, because this is all relevant content, right? You have one being added from the Cultist Quay, which is, hey, this is for the Delver, the new Delve that's out there. We have Feywood Spring, which is all about the Earthen. We have the Galagio Grand Gallery, which is all about goblins. So they're keeping them relevant for these 4 screens. They don't have a lot of old world ones yet, although Onaran Overlook is last expansion, so at least there's something there for folks to sort of grab. That was one that was up on PTR that people could check out already. So I'm curious to see what these other 3 are going to look like and how they're going to feel, and get them unlocked and have. I'm hoping eventually we can have multiple war bands that live at different locations. So you can have, have that brick at the top of your character list that have the 4 characters in it. I'm hoping I can have 2 or 3 of those bricks at the top, and I can essentially have like my, heroes and adventurers who are hanging out around the goblin area, and my heroes and adventurers are hanging out in the cultist area, and like have that kind of, you can like make transmogs that match the sceneries and the campsites they're in and what they're doing. And I'm hoping all that stuff eventually happens. So cool to see them adding this. Very happy they're adding this, and looking forward to checking these things out for sure.
Yeah, it's cool to get a preview of them. I hadn't really seen them before this post came out, just because I pay attention to blue text, and that's about it. I don't really look at other stuff, and I haven't played PTR this round, unfortunately. But yeah, the design on these is cool, and I like that there's one themed around the raid. I kind of like, over the years I've sort of felt like, I lived in a raid essentially for a period of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you just you're sort of, I guess it's a little bit less in the way that WoW is laid out these days, but still, it's like one of the main things that the gameplay revolves around is the raid. So like having a literal place that's sort of like you log in and you see the setting of the raid just immediately once you get into your characters. So that's kind of cool, and hopefully this is sort of a like a blueprint for every patch, where like every big update comes in and there's a warband screen tied to the raid, and then there's one tied to the Delve season, and then there's one tied to the Outdoor World season. Dungeons, I guess, is a little weirder because you have a dungeon rotation that's kind of all over the place, and it's a more bite-sized experience, I guess you would say, compared to like the raid or the kind of the persistent stuff of doing stuff in the Outdoor World every week or what have you throughout the course of a season. Not to say they would never do one, but I think it's cool to tie it into those particular things. I like the Cultist Quay a lot. That's a cool one. That'd be a really cool place. Like if you're like a rogue main or something, that's like, you get your rogues front and center or something. They're cool designs for sure. And yeah, I can only assume this is just a beginning, and that we're going to get all kinds of stuff. I would like to see stuff that calls more back to older content, as time goes on. Some more, I guess the problem with that though is like, it's a cool idea in your head, but some of those assets are really old. So if they set one like literally with, I don't know, Ashenvale assets or something, it might not actually look too good.
It depends on where they choose, man. Like there are areas of there where yes, there's older assets that are happening, but there's areas of those zones that are still really pretty that they could choose to do. And I don't I am also comfortable if they up-res some of that stuff if they're really looking to it. If they can smooth out some of the more polygon-shaped edges so it's more rounded and looks good, I'm cool with that too. But I would take like a what was the inn that was just across from the first boat you take out of Teldrassil over to the mainland? Like that inn to me,
Yeah,
with
Aberdeen.
like I would totally take an Aberdeen campsite. Like that would
that would be
wicked,
really cool,
right?
actually, with the coastline and everything.
Yeah, and if
sure.
they're like, oh well, Aberdeen got burned, et cetera, then give me the one that's in Ferrolas that's very similar, that's on that island in Ferrolas. Like I would take a very similar inn like that. To me, like I just think it'd be neat to have that old WoW, sort of feel for some of these characters and set them inside those locations would be really nice. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm looking forward to that.
I hope they get to it. And if that means, well, we know that they're going to be, we're going to be revisiting some older zones, not vanilla zones, but older zones in the next 2 expansions. So, maybe. I do want to point out, you were talking about having like different warband screens. That is coming in this update. You can have up to 20 different, they're calling them camp groups.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good.
So you can like mix and match like what background you want with which, warband you want featured there. So you can manage that and set up different campsites, favorite them, stuff like that. So yeah, like obviously they're building this feature out to really expand on into the future. So it's not just like a one-off thing where it's like, hey, what if we did a Galagio background or whatever? Like,
yeah,
I would expect this to get a lot of support over the years, which is cool. I mean, I think players love stuff like this, being able to sort of just customize their experience, dial in on the stuff they really like, or show off something that they earned or whatever. Like anywhere they can put that into the game, I think there's a ton of value there for players and people really respond to it. So yeah, it's cool. I'll have to look into what the unlocks are for, like the Feywild one looks really cool. It's like that village in Isle of Dorn.
Yeah,
I don't know what that achievement entails. I mean, I assume that the Galagio one is tied to doing stuff in the raid, whatever that achievement is. I tried to look them up in game, but obviously we're not in the data yet, so they're not in there. But yeah, so we'll see. I would imagine it's going to be stuff that's not. It's a login screen, right? So it's got to be like completable. Like you want to go do this so you can get this, relatively straightforward reward, right? Yeah. Like hopefully it's not like I don't know, like the BFA meta achievements, that were so punishing. Like these should be simple ones that players can just go get if they're participating in this content and enjoy it. Like, yeah, it's going to take you a while to unlock the Delves one, but if you do your Delves on a regular basis, you're going to progress through that track and you're going to unlock the reward.
Yeah, and most likely you will be doing at least some delves at the start of all of this to try and help gear up characters quickly and that sort of thing. All right, the War Within Season 2 begins March 4th. So although the patch is coming on the 25th, Season 2 doesn't kick off to the 4th. And this is what we talked about last week of hopefully they would do something like this, because I like having that 1 week to sort of get established in the content, check out the aspects you want in the content, get your characters ready, have that, that nice little window of experiencing the new thing without the pressures of everything else. Because otherwise, like, I just tear through questing content as fast as I possibly can so that I can be running Mythic Plus and be running all of this stuff and getting ready for raid and having this done and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't want to be in that situation. I want to be able to sit back, enjoy, go through the story. It's not going to be a week's worth of content. Like, it's not. The storyline's going to be cool. It's probably going to be like 8 to 10 hours at most, I would imagine, to get through. So folks can enjoy that in that first week, and then they can move into actually worrying about Season 2 stuff on March 4th. And speaking of which, raid schedule for that means that we see Raid Finder Wing 1 along with normal, heroic, and mythic difficulty all launching on the 4th, with Wing 2, 3, and 4 happening a week in the weeks later. So the 11th, 18th, and 25th are Wings 2, 3, and 4. So folks can basically, by the time we hit April, you'll have a full... March 25th, really, you'll have a full LFR experience if you're wanting to go through all of that content. And I imagine the adventure mode, the story mode, is going to be pretty soon after that for people to be able to check that out and get in there on story mode and experience at least the last boss and some storytelling. They'll probably not be too far behind on that.
Yeah, that'll be March 11th, actually, for story mode. So
you're right, there it is. It's snuck in there. Yeah.
If you're like, it's a little weird if you're like an LFR only player. We'll see how it's tuned. I think a lot of normal and heroic players, well, heroic-ish players will probably be done you know, maybe
Normal.
that first week. Like, yeah, it's an 8 boss raid. It's not a huge raid. They don't really do the big raids anymore. 12, 13 bosses, what have you. So, I think that's the way, like, a lot of progression raiders really want to experience it, but also they tell the story throughout the questing and everything, right? And the questing will be a couple weeks old at that point. So to not have that sort of cherry on top of the questing is a little weird. So yeah,
I agree that it's good pacing for players who are just here for the story. The content goes live on the 25th. They're probably not playing the game, avidly during that period of time. So it might take them a week or two to sort of get through that content. And then, of course, they have the March 11th story mode. They can dive into that and finish the storyline off starting on March 11th, which I think that'll work out well pacing wise for folks who are just here for the story and just want to see what's going on with that. Okay. Your last chance with War Within Season 1 achievements and rewards. This is the big one for folks who are like, hey, what do I need to do this week to sort of make sure I'm not missing out on stuff? Okay. So right off the bat, obviously the War Within Season 1 meta achievements, those are all going away because that's all tied to Season 1. So anything, if you type Season 1 into your achievement searcher and you find anything with War Within Season 1, all of that will go away. So that's Mythic Plus and PvP and some of the raid achievements, like the cutting edge raid achievements, those sorts of things. Those all go away based off of the season that we're in and how they're attached to season. So once the season ends, the only way to earn the meta achievement for completing the Luminous Nerubian Catalyst Stone, the only way to earn that is by completing the Mythic Raid achievement criteria. The other 2 criteria options will only be during Season 1. So if you're someone who's still trying to earn that particular stone, that reward, then that is going to be changed as far as how you earn it. That's the one thing that's changing for those who are trying to get the meta achievement for the Luminous Nerubian Catalyst Stone. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I think this might be new because I think that used to just go away. I'm not sure. Because I never go back and like clear out the mythic raids or whatever once they're soloable. And this hasn't even been in long enough for that to be the case. So this is the thing that it turns on the mythic helm and shoulder visuals on lower tier versions of that cosmetic, or lets you turn them off on the mythic one. So yeah, if you are gunning for that, I think honestly, like Keystone Hero is the easiest way to do this in general. And yeah, that will be going away sort of, but you will still have a crack at it if, it's going to be years before Mythic Queen Ansarek is soloable, but
yeah, well, and by that point you can earn the Mythic gear just by killing the bosses and getting the gear. Right.
But if you really like the mythic gear, but you don't want the crackling effect on it, if you want to shut that off, then that's what you got to do. It's a really weird, it's a bizarre reward item. It's cool. Like, I think it's cool to have ways for people to really dial in on.
You know where this should live? This should live on the coin vendor for the vault is where this item should live. After a season ends, it should move to the coin vendor for the previous season. So if you want to spend 4 coins or 8 coins or whatever it is they decide on as a reasonable currency for this, you can spend them after that season has ended to turn on or turn off the mythic graphic on that armor set. I think would be fine.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yes, it's cool to let people customize what their character looks like. It's a very weird, when they first put it in, like the amount of times I had to explain it to somebody, like what it actually was and what it did. It's like, it's strange. It's cool, but it's a weird way to implement it, in my opinion.
It's like when they added the enchants as an option for transmog, where you can transmog an enchant onto a weapon. Is what it's like.
The weapon illusions.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, but if you're so concerned like about this, then I would say try to get KSH done in the next, I guess, 2 weeks, right?
Yep.
And if not, it's not going forever, but depending on how much access you have to Mythic Queen Ansarek going forward, you may be waiting a while.
Yeah. Yes, but Ahead of the Curve and Cutting Edge also going away, so keep that in mind. The title reward for the Tempered, which is to get Mythic Plus rating of 1500 or higher within Season 1, that'll go away. There's some weird trickiness happening with some other rewards that we'll talk about in a second. But yes, the getting a 2000 rating or above inside season 1, getting you the diamond mech suit, that's going to go away. And then specifically with Stone Vault. So right now, and you may have noticed this, the rule is if one of the current War Within dungeons is not part of the Mythic Plus pool, you can't even run it on Heroic. You can't. You can't queue for it. There's nothing for you to do that on Heroic. You can't do Mythic 0 versions of it. There's obviously not Mythic Plus versions of it because it's not part of the rotation. So they say that the teleport to the dungeon option will only be available for those that are included within the Mythic Plus Season 1 rotation. So if you don't complete a Mythic Plus dungeon 10 or above in time within Season 1, you don't get the teleports to the dungeons. The malfunctioning mech suit will continue to be a drop in the Stone Vault on Mythic difficulty and is only available while this dungeon is active as a Mythic Plus dungeon during the expansion. And what they're referring to here is at some point later on, we usually see it with Season 4, they bring back all of the current expansions dungeons as Mythic Plus dungeons. And so if you're someone who wants the malfunctioning mech suit, you should probably start running Mythic 0 and Mythic Plus Stone Vaults to try and get the item off of the last boss that starts the quest chain for you to be able to get this mount. Because otherwise you will not be able to get it when this rotates out of it being a current dungeon until it comes back at some point later in the expansion. So just that's the complicated but important thing for those who want that mount. You need to start getting that trinket now off of the last boss of Stone Vault.
It's a weird thing. It's a quest starter item is what the malfunctioning mech suit is. And then you take the quest to Gundergaz, and then you have to collect various trinkets from War Within dungeons, and there's other stuff to do, which you should be able to do all the quest steps because you should be able to do them on lower difficulties. But yeah, you won't be able to get the starter drop in Season 2. I assume that we'll probably see, like, I don't know. I'm thinking Season 3 will be all 8. Well, I guess there's 9 War Within dungeons. Yeah. And my kind of thought right now is that there's not going to be a Season 4 and that we're going to see Midnight in an earlier window than we've seen expansions before, and they're not going to do that kind of 4-month season. I think people really seem to really hate Season 4, which I get, but I don't agree with. Like I've enjoyed having them in the last couple expansions, but I don't think they're going to do one this time. So I'm thinking, yeah, if you care about this, you better slam some Stone Vaults, even if you're doing, Mythic 0 or whatever for a shot at it. Because yeah, it's probably going to be another 6 months until you can do it again. It's a weird situation. And the rules that they have around the dungeon pool this season make it weirder. It also means that the note is confusing because you have to inherently know what the rules are. Otherwise, you read this and go, yeah, whatever. Because it says, like, the malfunctioning mech suit will continue to drop in the Stone Vault on Mythic difficulty. You think, okay, fine, whatever. I'll do it on Mythic 0 if I want to, but you can't, which they don't really like. They sort of pointed out, but you need to have that implicit knowledge of, like, yeah, this is the way the dungeon pool works in War Within. It's the seasonal dungeons are, Heroic, Mythic 0, Mythic Plus, etc. So keep that in mind if it's important to you.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, as far as PvP rewards go, the Vicious Skyflare, the Illusion for Holy Fire on Weapon, the Forged Gladiator's Fellbat, the title of Forged Gladiator, the reward of the Unbound Legends Pendant for Solo Shuffle, the toy for Forged Legends Pendant, the title of Forged Legend, the Unbound Strategist Pendant, the title of Forged Marshal and Forged Warlord for the 0.1% PvPers in Rated Battlegrounds, as well as the title of Hero of the Alliance and Hero of the Horde for the 0.1% in Rated Battlegrounds ladder. Those are all going to be going away because they're obviously tied to Season 1. So, obviously that will all wrap up and go away. When it comes to Delve rewards, The title of High Explorer is tied to Season 1. The reward of Zekvir's Raptorial Spine becomes a low-level chance off Zekvir kill after the end of the season. The Ascension Breaker title, as well as the mount for the customized the Delver's Dirigible Schematic Void for defeating Zekvir on his second difficulty, the double question mark difficulty. Those all go away. They're all tied to Season 1. So be sure that you actually get in there and get your stuff done as far as Zekvir goes, because the Zekvir stuff is going away. It's not that bad now. It is a progress fight in the sense that there's specific mechanics you need to do. So there is learning. It is challenging in the sense that you have to learn, okay, I have to interrupt this ability. Okay, I have to move out of this thing. Okay, I have to switch all of my DPS over to this thing at this time. Like, there are things you learn how to do. There's lots of YouTube video stuff out there. I know Missildine put together one that has gotten some recent popularity that people were watching. So there's a recommend on that. Just be sure.
Yeah, I gotta do this week, and I gotta watch Corey's video.
Yeah,
because I haven't been in there, I haven't seen it, and Corey's been like killing it with Del's videos, all expansion. He puts out Del's videos like every day.
Yep.
And he put out a strat guide to wrap up Zekvir before the end of the season. So I got to check that out because I got to do a little homework. I want to get this done this week because I've been slacking on it. Just that thing of like, I never really there was no reason to do higher level delves on the main, so I kind of just stopped doing delves on her entirely, and then started just farming 8s on the alts that I wanted to gear up. So this is a thing that'll probably be better in Season 2 because we have more of that progression all the way up to 11, right? Like, there are reasons to keep doing higher delves in Season 2 that we didn't have in Season 1. So I ended up in kind of this gulf where it's like, all right, well, I'm not doing this on the Warrior, but I'd want to get it done before season for sure. I just want to have done it. I don't really care about the title or I don't think I've even used the Delver's Dirigible at all. I don't think I've even mounted on it. It's a great Shadow Priest
mount. This Void mount is wicked on the Shadow Priest. It's very cool. Yeah, I definitely dig it.
I just haven't used it, so it wasn't a thing like I need, but I want to have done it because it's part of the whole Season 1 thing. I can do it. I want to have done it.
Yeah, I did unlock all of the customizables for it, and I did on one of my characters play around making like a really cool jet fighter style dirigible that I had a lot of fun with. And so it is a fun mount. It is a cool looking mount, and it's certainly something that I hope they carry over really well into the drive system once we start really playing around with that. Okay, speaking of drive, we have developers notes that we want to talk about for PTR here. The drive, the wheels now animate when you use a boost and at a standstill. So basically you now have wheels that spin properly. They're no longer just static wheels. So that's great. I'm glad they got in there with that. They also fixed a bunch of bugs about like colliding with things and drifting into things and that sort of stuff. I imagine there's going to be some really interesting interactions with having your character move that quickly and then like hitting a ramp or hitting something and the game going, I didn't like that, disconnect. So I'm sure there'll be some fixes that have to happen because Flight still has that. If you're just dynamic flying around and you just pick the wrong angle to accelerate at or accelerate into something at the wrong angle, sorry, you've exited the world. We're going to knock you offline. Please log back in. This tends to be the response to that. So I imagine we'll see some of that happening.
Yeah, anytime they introduce any kind of new locomotion stuff gets a little weird. So, I mean, they have fixed a lot of bugs with this, but I'm sure there'll be more. But also, I feel like with something like this, you have to sort of, I want to say err in the player's favor or give the player like the benefit of the doubt, like if you go over some terrain where like you're not really supposed to be drifting over it, you sort of got to cheat a little bit and let the player do it, right? Because otherwise it just feels terrible. You feel like you can't figure out the rules of how to use the system or whatever. So I think they're, the thing about like falling short distances doesn't cause you to instantly lose drift. I think stuff like that's really important because there's going to be times where you fall short distances. There's a grade on the road or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just the way moving around in WoW has always worked. So, but that seems cool. I hope it rolls out smoothly because it seems like it's going to be really fun. But hey, when Dynamic Flight Dragon Riding came out, in those like early alpha tests, I was getting DC'd all the time because I was moving too fast or whatever.
Yep.
But by the time Dragonflight actually came out, it was fine, and it's rarely a problem like in the live game sense. So it might be a little bumpy at first, but I'm sure they'll get there.
Yep. As far as class fixes go, though, I know you wanted to highlight the fact that Protection Warriors got themselves a 20% damage increase because, and this is,
Yep.
I have to read this developer's note because to me, I'm like, really? They go, we've noticed damage dealt by tanks has not been keeping up with the pace of damage dealers. So let's just stop there for a moment. Yeah. It's not supposed to keep up with the
pace. Really supposed to.
Let's be clear. Damage dealers and tanks are different roles and shouldn't be doing the same damage. However, if what they're referring to is that damage dealers are out damaging tanks by so much that tanks can't hold threat on anything because damage dealers are doing so much damage, which is the case for some classes like Enhancement Shaman or Elemental Shaman. Shamans are broken. So yeah, that is one of those cases. They're adjusting the damage of all tank specs to bring them into closer alignment with DPS specs. I'm curious as to what that alignment means because my first thought when you read this is like, dude, we don't want Legion and these older expansions where tanks were just like the kings. They just were always number one DPS. That was their main job. They would gear themselves entirely towards DPS because their potential was so high for damage that's all they would run. Right. And like they just stack Twisting Devastation because why not? Why wouldn't you stack Twisting Devastation as corruption because it was crazy broken. So we don't want that back ever. Like ever. We don't want that back. But
no, it shouldn't be a tank's main concern either.
It shouldn't be. But what they mean is, hey, we're doing this because when we give tanks a 20% damage increase, or Prot Warriors particular 20% damage increase, we notice that they're able to hold threat over the people doing 40 or 50% more damage to them on a regular basis. That is important to me. I go, okay, I get that. I understand that it's easier for you to increase a tank's damage than to play around with the threat system. I think that makes sense, and that is going to be an overall better feel for players. So I'm hoping that's the adjustment they're referring to in this. And they're also buffing Mountain Thane because people don't run Mountain Thane as much as they want them to.
Yeah, I guess Thunderblast isn't doing enough damage already, so another 10% on that. I'm thrilled. All tank specs got at least some kind of across the board damage increase like this. Paladin and Monk got 15% across the board, and the other 4 specs got 20% across the board. I think it's implicit that part of the reason why it's important that tanks do competitive damage in the overall picture is to hold threat. They did buff threat recently, and I think it's a weird thing to play around with because threat's not like the main part of the mini game anymore. Obviously, it hasn't been for a very long time, but you still want threat to matter in some ways. But if you buff threat too much, then it's not a mechanic, right? So you do have to make sure that the tuning number is in line, and they want tanks to contribute damage to the group. It's just you should be doing 20% of the damage of a DPS or something. You're not doing DPS level damage, but you are actually damaging your targets and stuff like that. So overall, I had some serious concerns about the Prot Warrior situation coming into season 2 and scaling back that strategist nerf and keeping, with the other bug fixes and the other buffs that they baked in with those earlier changes, and then reverting a bunch of that and then increasing tank damage across the board. I don't have concerns. I'll be shield slamming a bit less than I've been used to lately, but I think it's good. You want tanks to feel powerful and stuff. You can't. I think the worst situation, or one of the worst situations, is to come into a season and tanks in particular feel really weak. Tanks and healers need to be able to do their jobs in order for the rest of the group to have fun.
Yeah.
And it's one thing if your damage is low. It's like, okay, well, we got to execute for longer, but we'll get more damage as we get better gear and tuning changes or whatever. But if your tanks come in and they're just hitting, the enemies with wet noodles and they're getting ground into a fine paste, or the healers just can't keep anybody alive, it's like we're not playing the team game of World of Warcraft at that point, and it just feels bad. So I think it's been nice to see this, and this is why when the initial stuff came out of what they were going to do, I was like, this sucks, but I'm not going to get too down about it because I don't think it's going to ship this way. And that's sort of where we ended up. So, I'm excited to see what it feels like, even with, there's certainly nerfs baked into it as well. But I think overall it's going to be pretty fun, and we'll see how it plays with the new 4-piece. That's a big thing, right? Because that's gonna switch up the play style too. So, it's gone from like mild dread to more like excitement, for what's coming up in the season.
Fair. That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that as well. There were no changes to Boomy as far as this round of notes went, but there were changes to Og, so I figured I would mention those. They are trying to nerf them in as much of a way as they can, and I'm hearing that they're still in a pretty good spot. So I'm hoping that stays true, and we'll see where that actually ends up. But what they're noticing is that Rumbling Earth now deals 30% of upheaval's damage. It was 50%, so that's a 20% nerf on that ability. They also made it so that they fixed an issue where Breath of the Eons with maneuverability would extend Ebon Might from the free upheaval proc from the Liberation of Undermine 2-set bonus that was happening. So there was some extra extension that shouldn't be happening on Ebon Might, so it was lasting a bit longer than it should, which was something I actually noticed. It was very easy to like go from Ebon Might to Ebon Might to Ebon Might to Ebon Might and never actually drop out of it for too long, which isn't the intention. The intention is to have these windows where every now and then you drop out of it for 5 or 6 globals or whatever it is, and then you're back into Ebon Might again. Was kind of, it seems like the intention of what's happening with this. It's not something that you should be able to maintain all the time, but if we end up there, then that's fine too. The Liberation of Undermine set now has a reduced chance to trigger. It's been reduced down by 35%. So the 2 set now will not proc nearly as much as it used to, on top of obviously that fix that came in for it. And they made it so that the 4 set now has a 50% chance to trigger an Essence Burst as opposed to 100%. So some pretty large tuning that came in there, but apparently it was very necessary. I think from what I heard, augmentation evokers were just straight flat without even their increase that they're giving everyone else, just out DPSing other classes. Like that's not the intention of the class, to just be the damage dealer that does more damage than everyone else and contributes more damage to everyone else. So yeah, I think there was some tuning required there, I guess, and they went in and did it. So we'll see how it all feels next week when this thing all drops on the 25th. So after this week that we're heading into, we'll see how Og feels and what's going on with it. And once people start getting their tier sets and playing around with them, we'll have to see how all this starts to shake out. Okay, as far as these notes go, though, that kind of wraps up the PTR stuff. Is there something else I want to mention here? It looks like some of the delves got some tuning into it too. Nothing too big there. And
some nice brand, I would say, buffs.
Brand
I'm
buffs?
pretty sure they're buffs.
So? Okay.
I mean, Dwarven Medicine, I don't think does it currently grant damage reduction, or it's just a heal?
It's just a heal.
So it's getting a 15% damage reduction for 12 seconds, which is pretty nice, and it's getting a buff to the hot effect on it, the heal over time.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And
I will say they are making delves more difficult, so that's probably part of why they're doing this. It's to help people out.
That's true, and you're going to want to do higher and higher end delves than in season 1 for sure. Also, they're fixed an issue with the egg not summoning a Devilsaur, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing, is to see the egg go down and be like, kill it so I get a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like sinking globals into the stupid egg, and then nothing happens.
That would be very sad. Yes.
So apparently that's been fixed.
Where's my dino buddy?
A big thing that wasn't in the build notes, but was in a post about this most recent round of Mythic Plus testing, is a tuning pass where they've reduced the health of all creatures by 10% in Mythic and Mythic Keystone dungeons, which is like gigantic.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. They've been really like tuning Keystone dungeons in general like down over the course of this testing phase. Now, they've also kind of significantly reduced some timers in some dungeons. Undermine specifically, I think they cut like 6 minutes off the timer. But I mean, when you think of the amount of stuff you have to kill in a dungeon, just like that raw HP number going down by 10%, that is so much health cut out of each dungeon. So pretty interesting. Like, I'm really expecting Season 2 Mythic Plus to land gently compared to, even like mid-expansion seasons that we've seen lately outside of like maybe a Season 4, which have been pretty easy. I think they're really aiming for this to be accessible, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, it seems like, considering the way the system's going to dish out rewards and what they're trying to dial in with the dungeon tuning, I think we're going to get it into a really comfortable place with it much earlier than we have in some other seasons. So We'll see. I guess we'll only time will tell if that's ultimately a good or bad thing for the game, depending on if it does end up being easy, like how easy does it really feel, and how fast are people like essentially done with the system in terms of gearing or whatever. Time will tell on that, and who knows? Maybe they don't land in a place where it feels easy to progress through the system. I'm sure there's gonna be tuning and stuff after the patch. Obviously, they're not gonna just like get it right. That's not how tuning this game works, right? Like they have an idea of where it comes in, and then people play for a week and then they tune it, and then people play for a week and they tune it, then people play for 2 or 3 weeks and they tune it some more, and that's how it goes at the outset of a season. But it seems like there's a concerted effort from the dev team to make Season 2 Mythic Plus a lot more accessible than Season 1 in like every regard that you could take that, right? Between the like
how the
Keystone reward structure around it, what happens inside them, like all that stuff.
They're really getting in there to make sure that people can be pushing higher keys and experience higher keys easier with Season 2, which I'm excited for, and putting in the reward structure to encourage people to try and get into higher keys. Like you said, we're going to be seeing rewards at the 3K sort of rating level for try and push people to get up there and check out the really high end stuff. So next week we're covering a blog post that came out this week, which is why I'm mentioning it, because I'll throw it in the patch notes for today just so people can check it out if they want to ahead of time. But we're going to recap a post that came out this week, next week, which is the War Within Season 2 begins March 4th. This has, obviously the raid breakdown. It has Operation Floodgate. It has the new dungeon rotation that's going in, the rewards for people to earn from Keystone Hero and other Mythic Plus things attached to it. The new delve that's involved in that, the Delver's Journey changes that are happening with that. It has the Season 2 PvP stuff. It has a whole bunch of titles and stuff you can earn from all the PvP and all of the Mythic Plus and delving rewards. It has the new world boss, which FYI we haven't announced yet, but I'll announce right here and now, which is the Gobfather, which is cool. I'm glad they're going with it. I'm curious as to what this is going to end up looking like and feeling like, but basically once a source of pride for the Bilgewater Cartel, this mech was a force to be reckoned with in the Demolition Dome, a pinnacle of goblin innovation until someone forgot to give him an oil change. Now the king of the Demo Dome has gone haywire, running amok and threatening to unleash havoc upon the citizens of Undermine. So we get to fight a big old Gobfather robot, whatever that ends up looking like. So we'll be chatting about that. You have a chance to get a bunch of loot. We'll talk about what that loot is. The Season 2 meta achievements that are there. So all that's going to get recapped next week as we head into that first week of Season 2 and get people hyped and prepped for what that's going to look like. All right. With that, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give towards the show, as well as all of our patrons past and present. We appreciate all of you. You keep this show going and keep us scheduling it every week and making sure it happens. So thank you so much to all of our patrons. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons, for everything you contribute to the show, past and present. It means a lot. It helps us keep everything on track and, keep the show running, keep new episodes coming out, keep the archives online, and everything like that. It helps people find the show, helps grow our community and everything like that. So we appreciate you, and we can do it without you.
If you want to join the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/thestartingzone and pick the tier that works for you. Like I said, that's going to be shifting a little bit, not expense-wise or organization-wise as far as on our part. It's that the Patreon site is shifting to a monthly, payment system as opposed to a per content creation payment system. So some of that's going to shift in the next little bit here. So just a heads up, and we'll obviously communicate through Discord and through the Patreon site itself about what those changes and what they look like and how that might affect folks, just so folks are really clear as to what's happening with it. So we'll let you know. We'll give you a heads up on that. Okay, if you folks have enjoyed this episode, another great way to support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review. Head on over to essentially your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts. Leave us one of those 5 stars. They really help us out. And that's going to wrap up episode 671 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can also contact us with your feedback and questions at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord server, like I said, startingzone.com/Discord. And we're also on Blue Sky. So if you wanted to startingzone.bsky.com, you can find us there. And if you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone. You can check out all the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, or over on Blue Sky. It's jlucas.bsky.social over there. So come say hi. I mostly just post on Blue Sky, but I do keep up with both sites and I check my DMs and stuff. So come say hi over there if you're so inclined. You can find video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. We've been pretty quiet so far this year, but we'll start, streaming some stuff once we get patch and season and everything. We'll stream some of the new raid and new keystones and all that. So check out the video channels as well.
If you want to follow me on socials, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, over on Blue Sky at SpencerHD.bsky.social, or you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.